Sathya Sai Speaks, Volume 7, Chapter 19. The Journey in the Jungle. The glory of Bharat is indescribable. Its people have reached the Himalayan heights of spiritual endeavor and handed down vast treasures of wisdom for all mankind. But of late, little men search for coal in the diamond mine. Children of this land must seek and secure the gems and be proud of the achievements of their forefathers. The Vedanta Shastra, spiritual science, is the basic science for the happiness of the individual and of the community of man. It preaches unity, peace, and the existence of the divine in man. 3 texts are considered authoritative by the seekers of this land: the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. These 3 teach the essentials for the higher life of the spirit. In order to make the teaching clear to the uninitiated, 3 great commentators, one after the other, wrote elaborate interpretations of these texts. And since each of them had one particular viewpoint, the 3 saw in the self-same texts 3 different but not divergent paths to the goal of liberation. Shankaracharya elucidated them from the Advaitic, non-dualistic point of view, Ramanujacharya from the Vishishtadvaitic, qualified dualistic, and Madhvacharya from the Dvaitic, dualistic point of view. Dvaita philosophy, or the dualistic point of view, declares that the Jivi, individual, is Jivi, and Deva, universal, is Deva, and the twain shall ever be only two. The Advaita school of philosophy declares that there is only one entity, Deva, and that the Jivi is a false improvisation which ignorance conceives, because it is not able to realize the universal, which alone exists. There are no two. Advaita means no two. Vishishta Advaita, special or peculiar, no two-ness, declares that Jivi is a limb of the universal, a component, but a distinct component of the one. Faith should be patent even when suffering. All 3 are genuine paths to the same goal, and those who follow one cannot change over to another all of a sudden. A car cannot change over to another all of a sudden. A car cannot fly in the air, nor can a plane taxi along the road to the destination. I am the Son. God is my Father. I and my Father are one. These declarations of Christ are significant in this context. As one's vision gets clearer and sharper, one's knowledge of oneself and the universal in which he is involved becomes clearer, sharper and truer, until it becomes the very breath, the very core of his existence. There was a famous scholar once who earned great fame as a Vedic exponent, but no one could guess his caste. Many suspected that he was not a Brahmin, but there was no means of discovering. At last, the wife of a Pandit said she could easily solve the problem. The scholar was invited for a feast at the place, and when he was fast asleep, after a full repast, she applied to the sole of his foot a red-hot brand, at which the Vedic scholar yelled, "Allah!" Thus it was discovered he was a Muslim. Faith should not be a matter of exposition only. It should be patent even when you yell in pain. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras says, Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is restraining the agitations natural to the mind. Man alone is endowed with the equipment needed to establish mastery over the senses. Birds, beasts, and other species have no such capacity to discriminate and renounce. They act on instinct or impulse. They cannot argue, assess, accept, or reject. Stick to your innate nature, whatever may happen. A hermit was one day bathing in the Ganga when he saw floating downstream on a piece of wood a scorpion. This is God, encased in the scorpion form and name, he felt. He wanted to save the scorpion, so he took it on his palm. But when it stung him, he dropped it onto the waters. Then he was stricken with remorse, and so he lifted it up again. Thus, it stung him 5 or 6 times, but he persisted in his mission of mercy, and at last managed to drop it on dry land, so that it could go its way alive and happy. Many people watched his efforts and laughed at him for his stupidly exaggerated sympathy. The hermit told them that the scorpion had taught him a lesson and he was thankful for it. They asked him what it was. He said, "Stick to your innate nature, whatever may happen. That is what it has taught me." Its nature is to sting. It stung, regardless of whom or when. Man's nature is to achieve jnana. Ananda is man's essence. Love is the bloodstream that sustains him. Peace is the vision that guides and directs him. That is the reason why he is addressed as Amritasya Putra in the Upanishads. He is the son of immortality. He is eternal. He has no birth nor death. In the Gita, Krishna declares that among the mountains he is Himagiri, the Himalayas. From this, you should not infer that Krishna was a patriot who spoke a good word about the physical feature of his mother country. To reach the Himalayas, the abode of the pure, white, cool snow, symbol of sattvic virtues, you have to pass through Haridwar, the gateway of God awareness, and through Rishikesh, control of the senses. Then only can you be the liberated soul, which is of the same essence as he. That is the inner meaning of this statement by Krishna. Unless you know the inner and the correct meaning, faith will be uncertain and practice spasmodic. The 3 tragedies and the cure to overcome them. The consequence of avoiding the knowledge and practice of Vedanta is the increase of 3 tragedies: papam, tapam, ajnanam. Sin, suffering, and ignorance. The name usually given to the reality that you are, namely Rama, is the cure for all 3. Atma is known as Atma Rama because Rama means that which pleases and nothing confers such vast, inexhaustible joy as the Atma. So, the word Rama means the Atma. That word consists of 3 components, Ra and Ma. Ra is the mystic representative of Agni, fire principle. It burns sin into ash. Ah is the symbol of Surya, sun, principle. It destroys the darkness of ignorance. Ma is the symbol of Chandra, moon, principle. It cools the tapam, or heat or suffering. So Rama overcomes all the 3 tragedies and reveals the truth, the beauty and goodness. Repeat the name Rama with this significance in mind, and you can feel its effects very soon. Man is Atma Swarupa, of the nature of Atma, which is truth, beauty, goodness, peace, and love. But he craves against his nature for the false, the fleeting, the crude, the inert, and the chaotic. This is demeaning and disgraceful. Man must turn his face away from these and seek in himself the source of strength and joy. He must always have in view God, of whom he is an expression, when he does any act. The Karma Kanda of the Vedas, which prescribes yagas and yajnas, Vedic rituals of sacrifice, is designed to secure for man the grace of God and not, as is often assumed, a happy life in paradise. The prompting should arise not from desire for paradise, but from desire to obtain grace, to dedicate the yoga to God, leaving the benefits therefrom to the will of the bestower. Nachiketa taught his father this superior outlook on the subject of yaga and yajna. The emphasis must not be merely on ritual correctness, but unconditional surrender to the God, who is invoked and propitiated in these rituals. Sacrifice the animal characteristics in yaga. For example, the texts speak of bhuta bali offerings to the elements as a rite to be observed. The common meaning of bali is sacrifice of an animal, but the correct meaning of bali is a tax, a tribute, an impost. It is from the taxes paid by the people that the government is able to provide various services and comforts for better living. So too, it is from the consolidated funds of these balis that the divine in the elements are providing humanity the benefits they derive, which will facilitate the acquisition of jnana, spiritual knowledge. In the yagas and yajnas, bhuta bali forms an important rite. Sacrifice the animal characteristics like pride, hatred, and passion, and save yourselves. When you go to a shop to provide yourself with something you need, you know that you cannot get it without paying its price. You have come here in order to get some inspiration or information, or some glimpse of the inner treasure that you possess, and of the means of benefiting by it. Call it Atma Sakshakara, Moksha, Atma Tattva or liberation, Nirvana or anything else. You have come to this shop for it. We are selling the thing you need, but you are hesitant to pay the price. The mouth is closed tight. When the bit and the bridle are brought, it opens wide when gram or grass is brought. Is said of horses. It should not be said of men. When the bit and the bridle are brought, it opens wide when gram or grass is brought. It is said of horses. It should not be said of men. So when you come to gatherings like this, you must come aware of the precious ware that is here available, and anxious to assimilate as much as possible. Eager attention now, reflection later on what has been heard. That is the price you have to pay. There is no use reading without practicing. Reflect and put into practice what you recognize as beneficial in what you have listened to. Practice gives you the golden harvest of blissful experience. If you spend all your time in erecting the fence, when are you going to raise the crop? When you spend all your time in reading about agriculture and of the excellent crops that can be got by using high-yielding strains of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, etc., but do not plow or sow or spray or dig or pull out the weeds, how can the granary be full? Reading, reciting, listening, these are not enough. Practice is what is needed. If you are told that Nachiketa did this, or Shvetaketu said that, of what avail is it? unless you adopt them as your ideals, exemplars, guides. These Upanishads and scriptural texts are only fairy tales. Try to understand their steadfastness, their faith, their sense of values, their virtues, and their uprightness, and yearn to acquire them. Then only can we have another Nachiketa and another Shvetaketu, or else in the entire course of human history, there will be only one Nachiketa and one Shvetaketu. Learn lessons from the events around you. You have seen hundreds of funerals, but no lesson has been learned. Buddha saw but one. It changed the course of his life and opened a new chapter in the history of the world. You have seen long processions of sannyasins. Buddha saw only one sannyasin. You have seen sick men by the hundreds. The renunciation of the sannyasins, the suffering of the sick, the pitiable condition of the aged. These made profound impressions on Buddha. He left his palace, his wife and newborn child to seek the remedy for the miseries of life. If you cultivate a mind that will welcome such transforming expressions, these discourses will benefit you. With all the millions who gather all over this ancient land to listen to spiritual discourses, put into practice a tenth of what they hear. Bharat will rise once again to the pinnacle of spiritual glory. But do not despair when confronted by the obstacles, the atmosphere, the handicaps, the dissensions and the doubts. They are all good omens, no unpropitious ones. You will soon delight in the restoration of Sanatana Dharma to its pristine glory. This must happen, it will happen, it shall happen. Meanwhile, without losing heart, you should determine your path and pursue it unwaveringly. A celebrated sage once advised an aspirant that he could get God realization in 30 days if he spent all the 24 hours in the contemplation of God. He went to his place, did as he was told, and after 36 days, he continued for 6 more days. He hurried to the sage in great rage, for he was sadly disappointed. The sage asked him for an account of his daily schedule of activity during the 36 days. The disciple said, "Well, I rise from bed at 4 o'clock, wash and get ready for dhyana by 5, meditate until 6, move about until 8, have something to eat, doze off for a few minutes, read a few pages, converse with friends for a while on the happenings in the world, bathe and drink something hot afterwards, etc., etc. With Ramanama now and then in the intervals." The sage answered, "Wonderful indeed. I did not anticipate you will behave so crudely. I directed you to use all the 24 hours in the contemplation of God without wasting a single moment. I did not lay down any other schedule. Spend as much time as there is in 30 days in the unalloyed contemplation of God. You will attain liberation." Meaning of unalloyed contemplation on God. The best method of carrying out the sage's direction is to believe that this body is the residence of God, that the food you take is the offering you make to Him. Your act of bathing is the ceremonial bathing of Him who is in you. The ground you walk on is His domain. The joy you gain is His gift. The grief you experience is His lesson. Remember Him ever, in sun and rain, day and night, sleep and awake. That is the unalloyed contemplation he advised the pupil to do. Life is a jungle, where there is a great deal of dry wood, which harbors worms and insects. No one cleans the floor of the forest or cuts away the undergrowth of bush and bramble. To wade through the thorns and the leech-ridden flow of the jungle, one has to wear boots. So too, one has to wear the boots of sense regulation if one has to pass through the jungle of life without harming oneself. This is the lesson I want you to carry home with you today for pondering over and for practice. Prashanti Vidwan Mahasabha, Madras, April 22nd, 1967.